UFC Vegas 49. I'm going to give you my final picks, and later in the video we'll build some lineups, so make sure you watch until the end. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. If you haven't yet, go back and watch the full breakdown from earlier in the week. That's where I go over the slate fighter by fighter, salary by salary, and talk about spots that we like and spots that we don't like. For this final picks video, we're going to be focusing on strategy and what we need to do to be successful on this card. Well, for starters, we're going to need to pay attention. Earlier in the week, I said we have 12 fights now, but there's a good chance that we're going to end up with less than that come fight time. You're going to have to start calling me Mystic Black because I predict these things. We lost the Jin Yu Frey and Hannah Goldie fight, so we're left with 11 fights to work with on this slate. But we still need to watch closely right up until lock because there are fighters that are competing this Saturday that have missed weight in the past, and I'm not going to be surprised if it happens again, so make sure you're playing people who are fighting. It's really important. Now, recently, favorites have been dominating on these slates, but like we talked about earlier in the week, I think this week is a little different. This is our mindset this week. I think a lot of plus money is going to be cashing. I think that plays below 8,000 have a ton of value, and we're going to go over those in just a second. But first, if you believe all dogs go to heaven, make sure you subscribe. Now, for the first value play, these are plays at 8,000 and below. Wellington Turman really stands out to me. The way I see it, if Cirkunov can't find a submission, he's going to lose the fight. Cirkunov doesn't really offer a whole lot on the feet, and he might struggle to get Wellington Turman down. Turman has never been taken down in the UFC. He's never been submitted in his career, and prior to this fight, he was preparing to fight Rodolfo Vieira, who's one of the most dangerous grapplers in the division. And he's only 25, so he's still learning, still developing as a fighter, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some improvements on display in this fight. Money's been coming in on Wellington Turman throughout the week, and it makes sense as to why. If Cirkunov spends the first round struggling to secure a takedown, he's going to be gassed for the rest of the fight, and I think that's where the younger fighter and better athlete should shine. I like Wellington Turman at 7,900. At 7,800, Terence Mckinney, he looks great. Expect him to come in at real high ownership. The finishing upside, the wrestling advantage, and the matchup are all what make him a great play this week. Ziam has been taken down in all of his UFC fights. He doesn't throw volume. We haven't seen much power from him on the feet. He does have decent cardio, but that could be a result of just low output. If you're not doing too much, you're not going to get that tired. So stylistically, I think this matchup really favors Terence Mckinney. He should have the power advantage on the feet. He should be able to get this fight to the ground at will, and from there, he's probably looking at a TKO finish. So I like Terence Mckinney inside the first round at 7,800. I think a lot of people are going to get here, but I think it's worth it. At 7,700, Armen Petrosyan looks like one of the top 3 highest owned underdogs this week. Everybody is looking to play him, but it's for good reason. It's hard not to like Petrosyan in this spot. His striking could make him a serious problem for the division, and I think he puts everyone on notice this week when he sleeps RoboCop in the first round. Now, I don't want to disrespect Gregory Rodrigues. He's very talented. He's favored in this fight. He's got the grappling advantage. He's got the experience advantage. And we've seen him finish tough guys before like Jun Young Park. But Park had him rocked bad in that fight, and he looked like he was nearly going to win. And the fight prior to that, Greg Rodrigues picks up the win over Dusko Todorovic, but you expect him to run through somebody like Dusko, who's pretty chinny, not defensively sound. You think Greg Rodrigues picks up the knockout in that spot, but it goes the whole 15 minutes. And the biggest blemish on his record, and something that I can't get away from, is just his loss to Jordan Williams. That's such a bad loss. Jordan Williams is trash, and he should have been able to beat him easily. But he lost that fight because he has a bad chin, and he doesn't respond well to being hit. He kind of Frankensteins it, where when he gets hit, his head goes back, and his arms go out in front of him, and his chin's all up in the air, kind of just... And I think that he's reaching out to maybe get the clinch, but he leaves his chin way too open when he gets hit. I think Petrosyan just lets his striking go, finds the knockout early, probably mid-first round. I just think that it's going to be a force that Greg Rodrigues isn't going to be able to handle on the feet. So again, pretty chalky, but it could be worth it at 7,700. Armen Petrosyan looks like a good play. At 7,600, we've got Priscilla Quechuera. It's not a must play, but her path to victory builds value into her price. If she wins, it's going to be by way of knockout, and she's going to score a decent amount of points. It's probably going to be inside the first or second round. And Kim is tough, but she may be too tough for her own good. She eats a lot of strikes generally, We know Cachoiera has power, at least decent power for the division. And another reason to like Zombie Girl this week is there is virtually no threat for a takedown in this spot. Other fighters have had success getting her down, tiring her out, but in this spot, she can throw her strikes with less worry of being taken down, which means she's probably winging heavier shots against a very hittable Yeon Kim. Again, this is not a must play for me, but she's definitely live for the finish. You can expect her to come in at lower ownership than most of the fighters that are priced around her. Priscilla Quechuera seems like decent value this week if she wins. Now at 7,200, I think we have a little bit of sneaky value on Rong Zhu here. The case I can make for Zhu is that Bahamondes is very hittable, and Zhu can crack. We can also expect him to look for takedowns, and that might be hard against the taller, longer fighter in Bahamondes, but if he keeps looking for it, he could secure a few in this spot. This fight is probably going to be a war either way. I do see it going the distance, and I think it's going to be a competitive fight, and with the way that the judges can be, Uzan could easily have his hand raised on Saturday night. I prefer Bahamondes in this spot, but I don't strongly lean there at all. Zhu isn't the worst play at his price at 7,200. I think he can make something happen. And at 7,100, we have everyone's darling this week, Yoel Alvarez. There's a lot to like about Alvarez at this price. He's coming off the biggest win of his career over Thiago Moises. Got an 8-inch height advantage, 5-inch reach advantage, 100% finish rate. I can't remember the last time an underdog around this price has gotten as much love as Yoel Alvarez has gotten this week. I expect him to come in at ridiculously high ownership, especially with Makhachev being 9,500. In most of your contests, you'll probably see Makhachev, McKinney, and Alvarez be the highest owned fighters. Earlier in the week, I said Alvarez is the pick. But there are a couple of things that are happening that I can't ignore. Alvarez is getting a lot of love publicly. A lot of money is coming in on him. And a lot of people are going to be playing him on Draftkings this week. And he's not even the favorite in this matchup. So with all of the love that he's getting, it's hard for me to like him this week. A lot of us are picking Yoel Alvarez on the basis that he's the much bigger fighter and he's dangerous off of his back. But the striking technique and offensive wrestling advantages definitely lie on the side of Armen Tsarukyan. Obviously, if Alvarez picks up the finish, he's going to be on the winning lineup at his price, but if you pay up for Armen Tsarukyan and Tsarukyan ends up winning, you're going to get massive leverage over the field. And leverage over the field is what MMA DFS is all about. Which brings me to my next point. How do we get different this week? Well, I think a great way to get different this week, if you want to, is play Armen Tsarukyan. The deeper you look at this, the more it makes sense to play Armen Tsarukyan. Yoel Alvarez is supremely confident in his submission game, so he welcomes takedowns more than he tries to fight them off. Armen Tsarukyan is going to be looking for takedowns in this spot. He's probably not going to be looking to strike at range with somebody who's 8 inches taller than him. So each of these takedowns is 5 points plus control time. On top of that, I expect the fight to get easier for Tsarukyan the longer that it lasts. He's going to have the better cardio in this fight. But again, the biggest reason why I like Tsarukyan on DraftKings is because of the leverage that we're going to get on the field. Alvarez might come in at over 50% ownership in a lot of your contests, while Tsarukyan, I could safely say, is probably going to be under 20. Great way to get different this week. And there's another way that you can get different this week. And before I piss you off, just hear me out. When you're building your lineups, when you open up DraftKings, you're ready to build your lineup that's going to make you all the money, and you plug in Islam Makhachev, what I'd like for you to do is take him out and put Ramiz Brahimaj in there. Wait, hear me out. Islam Makhachev is going to beat Bobby Green. There's no doubt in my mind, but how will he beat Bobby Green is the question. Best case scenario is he goes out there, gets a takedown, ties up a submission in the first round, which is roughly around 100 points like we saw in his effort against Dan Hooker last time out. Now, if he gets the finish later in the fight after securing some takedowns, control time, strikes from a dominant position, he might score around 115, 120 points like he did against Thiago Moises. Now, Islam Makhachev is the biggest favorite on the card. He's fighting in the main event. He might be the best fighter in the division. So he's probably going to carry over 60% ownership in most of your contests, but his ceiling is around 110 to 120 points. Now look at Ramiz Brahimaj in his matchup. Michael Gilmore is a terrible grappler. All of his losses have come by way of submission or the one ground and pound loss. Best case scenario, Brahimaj gets a takedown, finds a submission inside the first round. Same path to victory, same likely outcome as Makhachev. The only difference is Ramiz Brahimaj has a much better matchup on his hands. So if they both go out there and secure a first round submission, there's a real possibility that they score right around the same amount of points. Well, Brahimaj is probably going to carry a third of the ownership that Makhachev does, and he's the cheaper option of the two, so that would make him a better play. Replacing Makhachev with Brahimaj is going to be my strategy this week, and as always, listen, I don't tell you to do anything that I don't do myself, right? Ride together, die together. That's enough to subscribe, I hope. But on an 11-fight slate, you have to find ways to get different, and I think this is a really easy way to do that. And it's not like you're trading off for somebody who is not going to be in a favorable matchup. Ramiz Brahimaj is probably going to tie something up inside the first few minutes. Now let's build some lineups. This is probably what you're going to see a lot of on Saturday. If you're making lineups throughout the week, this is probably what a lot of your lineups have started looking like. You'll probably see a ton of this. Islam Makhachev, Yoel Alvarez, Terence McKinney. They're going to come in at high ownership. You could probably expect the same thing from Armen Petrosyan. A lot of people are going to look to catch that Josiane Nunes knockout upside. And Ignacio Bahamondes, I don't think a ton of people are going to get here, but if you start building your lineup out this way and you have 9,000 left, they're probably going to get to him as opposed to Jonathan Martinez. And this lineup doesn't look bad. I mean, Petrosyan, I think that he's going to win. I think the same thing about McKinney, Nunes, and Makhachev. Just again, if we wanted to look at how to get different, there are a couple of tweaks that we can make to this. First is I'm taking out Makhachev and I'm going to put Brahimaj in there. Second is if I'm going the other way with the Tsarukyan Alvarez fight, then I'm going to plug him in place of Yoel Alvarez. Now we have to save some salary. Well, I've got to come down from Bahamondes, and I'm probably going to have to come down from Nunes as well. One name that's actually stood out to me as the week has gone on is Carlos Hernandez. I went back and watched his Contender Series fight. He works the body really well, and oftentimes when he is closing distance, he's getting in these clinch situations and he's just throwing little trips out there, grabbing a single leg up. Victor Altamirano does nothing when it comes to defending the takedowns, and I think that Carlos Hernandez might have a lot of success, score you a decent amount of points on Draftkings if he is getting these takedowns and controlling them from the top. So if you plug him into your lineup, you've got 7,900 left, and you can go grab somebody like Wellington Turman, or if you wanted to reduce the salary a little bit to leave something on the table, now you're looking at Priscilla Quechuera. Now you might not feel as good about this lineup as you did with the other one, but this lineup is going to be way different, and this is probably closer to what you would see at the top of your contest, especially if you're playing something maybe larger field. I think Brahimaj and Tsarukyan playing them together makes you very different, and I think Priscilla Quechuera also keeps the ownership in check for this lineup. Now, if you're playing really big field stuff and you want to go completely against the grain, I think there's a way to do that as well. I think if you went with somebody like Tsarukyan, Nunes, Rodrigues, you can grab Rong. It's hard not to want to play Terence McKinney. And then I think, again, you can come back here to Carlos Hernandez. I think this lineup would be real different if you were playing it in some larger field stuff. I think Greg Rodrigues will come in at lower ownership than Petrosyan. I think that Tsarukyan will come in at lower ownership than Alvarez. And I don't expect a ton of people to want to go play Rong. So this is a really good way for you to get different in some of these large contests. Now, if you're thinking, well, Kunith, I do actually want to play Makhachev. I do think that Yoel Alvarez is going to win. How do I build a lineup with the two of them? Well, if we took Makhachev, we come down here to Alvarez. We've got 8,300 to spend. I still like Terence McKinney. I think Carlos Hernandez is a good pick. And then I think where you're getting different here is with the Gregory Rodrigues pick. I expect more people to be on Petrosyan than Greg Rodrigues. And I think that that will make this lineup just a little bit different. But at the same time, if you are building out a lineup with these two, just know that it's probably going to be pretty chalky. If you're playing in a contest with thousands of people, a lot of your competition is going to look exactly like this. If you have any questions about your lineups, throw them down in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them for you. And before we wrap up, I'm just going to give you my picks for each fight, starting with Makhachev. I think it's Makhachev by submission, Wellington Turman by decision, Priscilla Quechuera by knockout, Armen Tsarukyan by decision, Armen Petrosyan by knockout, Ignacio Bahamondes by decision, but I don't feel that strongly about it, Josiane Nunes by TKO, T-Rex by TKO, Martinez by decision, Brahimaj submission, Carlos Hernandez by decision. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, if you've enjoyed the content at all, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, that way I can bring more of this to you.